All right, so lecture 15, arrays. So you may have heard me mention arrays prior to today. Basically, an array is essentially a list. It's just a list. It's a way of organizing a block of memory sequentially, so back to back to back, and you can add or modify data in that list. Okay, so where is it? Java Visualizer. Before we go into the lecture, I just want to show you this. Public class lecture 15. Public static void main string args. Then I'm going to make an array, and we'll talk about the format of making it. But I'm going to make an integer array. Numbers equals new int. And what I'm going to say is going to be of size 10. And I'll talk about this in a second. Close my main, close my class. So when we visualize this, what you'll see is that array becomes a list in memory. So starting from 0 all the way up to the size -1, which is 10 minus 1 or 9. So 0 to 9, I have a list in memory that I can add data to. Okay, so essentially, an array, again, is a list in memory. It's organized sequentially in memory, so one after the other, and you can add data to that list. All right. All right, so an array is a data structure that represents a collection of the same types of data. So when you create an array, if it's an integer array, you can only add integers, right, or doubles. But if it's a double array, you can only add doubles. If it's a string array, you can only add strings, okay? You can't mix and match the data types of the values you want to put in an array. Again, it's similar to a list. Can be composed of integers, doubles, strings, characters. We learned about characters before. And if you recall, a string can be organized into a list, right? We have char at 0, char at 4, char at 8, char at 13, right? Whichever 0 to 14, okay? The overall length of this string would be 15, right? There are 15 individual characters, but you would index it from 0 to 14, right? Starting at 0 all the way up to 14. If we count each one of these up, though, there's going to be 15 of them total. So keep that in mind. We index it from 0 to the length -1. So therefore, the length of this string is 15. So indexes go from 0 to 14. Okay, 0 to 14, and there are 15 individual characters. So if you look at a string, doesn't this look like a list from 0 to 14? A string underneath the hood is an array, right? A string is an array, or it can be other data structures as well, but you can think of a string as an array. It's a list from 0 to 14. So what are some benefits of an array? It provides an indexable list. So each item inside that list has an index, starting from 0 to the length -1. And I can access all those different items based on that index. So for example, if I have 10 numbers I want to keep track of, I can add them to an array. Then I can loop through the array, remember that loop, and find the largest number, smallest number, and or sort the array if I want to. So how do we declare an array? How do we create one? Well, it's just like declaring a normal variable. The only difference is you will have open brace, close brace, open brace, close brace, open brace, close brace, open brace, close brace. That tells the Java that it will be an array. It's going to be a list, that open and closing brace. So if we look at my example, if I edit the code, right here, int, open brace, close brace numbers, I'm declaring an array right here. Right. I'm declaring an array. Int numbers. So the Java compiler knows, okay, this person is going to create an array, and it's going to be of integers, and it's called numbers, right? An integer array called numbers. Everybody with me so far? So in Zoom, there is a little feature that lets you put the thumbs up. So when I ask if you're with me, can you just throw up the thumbs up? That'd be helpful. You don't have to do it right now, but next time I ask. It don't take much. So once we declare the array, how do we actually create it? So how do we actually establish a list in memory? We would say whatever our array name is equals new, whatever the type is, and then the size of our array. All right. So again, if this is a double array, we would say new double size 10. New string size 15. When you are creating a string array, you're not creating just one string. You're creating an array that will hold, for example, 15 individually different strings. So if I have this right here, int numbers, I would say numbers equals new, it's an integer, and I want to say size 10. I can also say size 15. Okay. Another thing you can do is have a variable. So int must be an integer, size of array equals 10. So I have this size of array equals 10 variable. I can pass size of array right here. So it doesn't have to be explicitly typed, right? 60. I can just do, I have a variable size of array. So if I visualize this, we create our variable size of array that equals 10. We declare our array as an integer of called numbers, and then we create our array. So now numbers points to a list in memory from 0 to 9. Since the size is 10, we go from 0 to length minus 1. The length is 10, so we go from 0 to length minus 1. And let me say this, length of array. Length of array. We do this again. Length of array equals 10. Then we create an array from 0 to 9. Okay? With me so far? Oh, look at those. You even got a brown thumbs up. That's awesome. All right. So we continue. Since I have a variable right here, this opens up a lot of different possibilities, right? Now, instead of just saying the size, I can read that size in from the console if I want to, right? So I could say scanner input equals new scanner system.in. Right, I create the scanner to read from the console. Then I can say the length of the array equals input.next int. Of course, I need to import my scanner, import java.util.scanner. But now I can read in whatever size of the array I want. It doesn't have to be static anymore. So if I want a size 50 array, if I visualize this, scanner, I read in a 50, and then it creates an array from 0 to 49. If I edit this again, I want a size 150 array. Now the visualizer may have an issue with this, but I read in a 150, right? Length of array equals 150. It creates an array from 0 to 149. So you can dynamically, at runtime, establish the size of your array, but keep in mind, once I create this array, the length, cannot change. it will always have 150 slots in it. It will not have any more or any less, right? If I create an array of size 10, it will always have 10 slots in it, no more or no less. If I want to change that size, I would have to create an entirely new array. So for example, if I create this array, I read in a 150, but then I realize, oh, I need an array of size 10. I would have to say numbers equals new int, then size 10. I would have to do that new keyword again to create that new array. All right. So the 150 is static. This is going to be 150. Once I do the new, it's going to replace it 0 to 9. So again, once you create the length of array, you cannot add or subtract to that length. You have to create a new array. Okay, a new array that replaces the old one, or you have another variable that points to your new array. You cannot modify the length of an array once you create it.
Quick question.
All right.
So is that the only time we'll use the new array? Normally, if it's just like our first one, we won't have to put the word new, correct?
Correct. So the only time you have to use new is when you are initially creating the array. All right. I don't have to use it if I'm going to access the different slots in the array. And we'll get to that in a second.
All right.
All right. So you see here, I have my declaration statement here and my instantiation statement right here. I can put this all in the same line. It doesn't have to be on a new line. I can do this all on one line. Int numbers equals new int, length of the array. All right. All that, again, that currently is on 2 lines. I can put all that on 1 line. And I visualize this. Come on. I guess it doesn't want me to visualize it. Come on, visualizer. All right, let me retype this. Lecture 13. Import java.util.scanner. Scanner input equals new scanner. System.in. Int length of array equals input.nextInt. Int numbers equals new int. Size length of array. All right. There we go. All right. Like I said, I could put that all on 1 line. Let me visualize this. You see, we read in the length of the array and we create it. Just that simple, all on 1 line. So you don't have to do it on 2 lines. You can do it, everything on 1 line. Okay. Let's keep going. That's how we create the array. And this is just talking about putting it all on 1 line. And remember, your array can be of any type. So this is an array of integers. I can do double. I want to call this one averages equals new double length of array. Right? Or I can do string names equals new string length of array. So all 3 of these arrays, I'm going to make these all size 10. These different arrays hold different types. So numbers holds integers, and by default, those integers are all zeros. Averages also hold zeros. By default, they're all 0.0. String names holds no strings. right? So my numbers array holds integers. My averages array holds doubles. My names array holds strings. And what you see in here are all the default values for this array. So by default, an integer is 0. By default, a double is 0.0. And by default, a string is null. Okay, so these are all the default values for strings because we haven't set them equal to anything yet. All right. We haven't set them equal to anything yet. So again, the length of the array is the total amount of slots in our array. So if we make an array of size 10, the length is 10. But the index of the array goes from 0 to length minus 1. So if you notice, all of these are of length 10, and the index goes from 0 to 9, which is 10 minus 1. Right? Because inclusively, this is 10 different slots. We just, in all programming, we always start at 0. So we start from 0 to length minus 1. So if you want to get the length of your array, maybe you don't know it, right? Maybe you don't know the length, or you need to know the length at some point. What you would do is just say numbers. So whatever you name your array, dot length. That returns your length. So int length equals numbers dot length, and we'll see what that equals. Forward. We already know it's going to be 10, but just to be safe, our length is 10. So if ever you want to get the length of your array, which is really helpful for loops, you would say numbers dot length. And I'll show you using arrays and for loops later on, but that numbers dot length will come in handy when we start doing loops. Again, those default values for an integer is 0. For a double, averages equals new double is 0.0. And for a string, it's null. String names equals new string length of array. So again, by default, an integer array will have the default values of 0 for each index. A double array will have 0.0 for each index. And a string array will have null for each index. By default, we can change those values. This is just by default. When you create your array, these are the values that will be inside that array. So you know, if you try to go through your array and access something, maybe it's a string array, and you get a null value, that means you didn't set it equal to anything. You haven't changed or modified the array. All right, so this is just, I kind of did this already. So this is saying the size of an array. So if I create an integer numbers equals new int size 10, of course, we're going to have exactly 10 slots, and they're going to be indexed from 0 to 9, right? The index is 0 to 9, and this is 10 total slots. All right, so this is saying creating an array with literal values. So actually specifying the values of your array. So here's an example down here, and I'm just going to take this example. So if I want to establish the contents of my array when I create it, I would say, let's say for an integer, for example, int bracket bracket or brace brace numbers equals new int brace brace open bracket, whatever your values are, comma, separated by commas, close bracket, semicolon. That specifies exactly the contents of my array. So when I get to that line, this line won't be needed. And actually, I'm getting an error because I don't have any input. When I get to that line, my array will have those exact values. Okay. If I do this again, I have this other code. I have a string. And these are just artists. And then for good measure, I'm going to add one more. Who should I add? Right, I think I spelled her name right. So this line right here is going to specify that my array should have the contents Cardi, John Legend, Rod Wave, Ella May, and Drake. Okay. So when I run this, apparently I get an error. Oh, it needs a semicolon at the end of the line. Let me go to the end of the line. Semicolon. So when I run this, that should be the contents of my array. Right, the first one is that integer array. The next one is that string array. I have all those contents in there. Okay? That makes sense? Everybody with me so far? Let me get them thumbs up. All right. All right, so the issue with this is our program is not very dynamic or responsive, right? Since we specified the values, unless we know those are the values we want, now you can modify them and change them. I'm not saying you can't do that, but most of the times you want to create just an empty array and then populate those values. You don't want to declare it with those values. Now, of course, if your use case dictates that you do that, by all means, you can do that. But most of the time, you'll have to create an empty array and then populate it with values, okay? Maybe you have to read those values from a file. Maybe you have to read it from the console, you know. So now how do we access those individual values in our array? How do we, if we want to change those values, if we want to retrieve those values, how do we get those? So that's called indexing your array. And when you call or you get that value, it's called the indexed variable, okay? So the indexed variable, so say we have these two arrays right here, and I'm gonna just keep those two. We have an integer array and a names array. So let's say, for example, I wanna get the index 1 of my numbers array. I would simply say numbers, brace, 1. That gets me my numbers 1, the number at index 1. So let's say int indexed variable equals numbers, which is the name of my array, at index 1. So if I visualize this, index variable should equal 5,345. If not, something is off. Yep, 5,345. So I retrieved the value at my numbers array at index 1. I can do the same thing, index 2. Now this one should equal 6,547. Yep, index variable equals 6,547. If I do edit the code again, I can say string indexed variable equals my names array at index 4. I think there's index 4. So index 4, let's see. Index 4 is Drake. So index variable should equal Drake. Yep. So that's how you retrieve a value from your array. You use the name of the array and then whatever the index it is that you want to get. So if I want to get index 4, I put a 4 right there. If I want to get John Legend, I would put a 1 right here. All right. So I get John Legend. I put a 1 right there. You can also change the values of your array this way as well. But instead of getting or retrieving the value, you set it equal to something. So let's go to our numbers array. So let's say I want to change this value, 6,547, to whatever it is minus 1,000, right? I just want to subtract 1,000 from it. So numbers at index 2 equals, or we can do minus equals 1,000. That's just going to subtract 1,000 from index 2. Okay, so we visualize that. Forward, forward, forward. Remember, index 2 is 6,547. So we're going to subtract 1,000 from that. Now it's 5,547. Okay. Let's say I want to set it equal to 1,000. I want to change it completely. Whole new number. I can do that too. I change it to 1,000. Let's say I want to change numbers at index 4 equal to numbers at index 0 plus numbers at index 2. All right, can somebody type in the chat what they expect this to be? What should that result be? Numbers at index 0 plus numbers at index 2. Any other guesses? This result right here. So 1,342 is correct. All right. Reason being is, let's visualize it. If we go forward, so here's our array. Index 0 is 342. Index 1 is 5,345. Index 2, 3, and 4, right? We create our string array. On this line, we set index 2 equal to 1,000. So that's going to become 1,000. Then we add numbers index 0 plus index 2. We set index 4 equal to that result. So we added index 0 plus index 2, which would be 1,000, or I'm sorry, 342 plus 1,000. And we set index 4 equal to that result. One more time. So this line right here, we set numbers at index 2 equal to 1,000. So that's going to become 1,000 right here. Then we take numbers at index 0, which is 342. We add that to numbers at index 2, which is 1,000. And then we set numbers at index 4 equal to that result, 1,342. Does that make sense? I need a thumbs up from everybody on this one. All right. Any questions? Do you need me to go over that again? All right. If you need me to go over something or need me to stop at any point, you can put up the little hand up, the wave, whatever, raise hand, and I'll stop and I'll go back or review. All right. Okay, so let's do something else. Let's do something a little bit more complex. Let's do numbers 4 equals numbers 0 plus numbers 2. I'll put all that in parentheses times 2. Same concept, except now I'm going to take this result and multiply it times 2. So instead of 1,342, it should be 2,684, right? So we set index numbers at index 2 equal to 1,000. Then we set it to the result of this equation right here, 2,684. Right? Instead of 1,342, I multiplied everything by 2. Okay. Same thing for our names array. So we'd say names, I'm going to change John Legend, names at index 1 to something y'all don't know about, Luther Vandross, right? I'm changing index 1 from John Legend to Luther Vandross. That's before y'all time, y'all young bloods. All right. We visualize this if it wants to visualize it. Basically, it would change John Legend to Luther Vandross. If ever it worked. I'm just gonna, and everything is frozen. Anyway, names at index 1 would be changed to Luther Vandross. Let me see if I can go back a little bit. Yeah. All right, let's try this again. Let's remove that line. Let's see if it works. Okay. All right, names. All right, it is frozen. Can't type anything. It's frozen. All right, so basically that's how you would change and edit the contents of an array. That's great. All right, let me do this one more time. Let me take this code again. Where's that? String names. All right, there we go. All right. All right, so names at index 1 equals Luther Vandross. Hopefully it works this time. There we go. All right, so if we look here, we create our names array, Cardi, John Legend, Rod Wave, LMA, and Drake. We changed John Legend to Luther Vandross. All right. Names at index 1 equals Luther Vandross. Names at index 1 equals Luther Vandross. All right. Everybody cool on indexing arrays? We can set the values of that index equal to something, or we can just retrieve the value. We don't have to set it equal to anything. All right. So for example, if I said this right here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I said string, actually system dot out dot print line, who's the GOAT of the 2000s? All right. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give it up. My man's Drake. All right. If I visualize this code, it's gonna print out Drake down here. Right. I didn't set it equal to anything. I just retrieved names at index 4. You don't have to necessarily set it equal to anything. You can just retrieve the value, right? You can just retrieve the value. All right. I think I have an example of this. Yep. So indexing arrays. Int numbers equals new int. Of course, we're creating an integer array of size 10. If we say numbers at index 0 equals 14, we're going to set numbers at index 0 equal to 14. Right? Numbers at index 5 to 78. We're going to set 5 equal to 78. Numbers at 9, 3,829, 3,829. All right. So looping through the array, I don't know, do you all want to cover looping today, or you just want to save it for next week?
I got a question.
All right.
Just to clarify, so if I say I have an array as a length of 5,
Mhm.
like if I count it in my head, that means I have at spot 0 is 1, at the next spot is 2, and then, on. So it's like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
Correct.
That gives you that 5, right?
Right.
So it's always 1 less.
So the index always goes to that length minus 1. But if you count it up, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 5 individual indexes.
Okay, but you can only. I got you.
But you can only index from 0 to 4.
Okay.
The reason being inclusively, if you actually count those numbers, so if 0, you have 1 number, 1, you have 2 numbers, 2, you have 3 numbers, 3, you have 4 numbers, and 4, you have 5 numbers. So technically, you have 5 individual numbers there. It just starts from 0, not 1. That makes sense?
Yeah, I was just like, you were about to go over, but I was just thinking about how that would work in a loop. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the code for how to do it. You do int I equals 0, I is less than array name dot length. So you would get the length 5, and you would do I up to less than 5. So I would start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because once it equals 5, the loop stops.
So you would have to use a variable as the length, like how you did before?
So you can get the length. So you do your array name dot length. You can get the length.
Gotcha.
So,
all right.
well, real quick, I guess. If I want to loop through this array and just print everything out, I would do for int I equals 0. I is less than names dot length.
So what I was thinking was you couldn't make a variable. So like how you did before, if you read it in and you're basically saying, how long do you want this array to be?
Right.
Would you just make the array, read it in, and then just say get the length instead of making a variable? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can. You can. Either way is fine. As long as you know the length of your array and you don't exceed that length, you're fine.
All right.
Either if you want to use a variable or you just want to get the length of the array, either way. This is a little bit safer because you know for a fact this is going to get the most accurate length of your array. Somewhere along the way, for whatever reason, your variable may have changed, but you know the length of the array at this point will be that whatever the length of that array is. And for this array, for example, since I typed these literally, I don't have a variable of the length. I would have to do names.length. Then I would go inside this for loop and I would say system.out.println names at index I. I'll cover this in more detail next time, but this is how you would loop through the array. For in I equals 0, I is less than whatever the name of your array is, dot length, I plus plus. To access each individual slot in your array, you would say names at index I. So this will print out each index in my array. So the first time I equals 0. So names at index 0 is Cardi. So I expect Cardi to be printed out down here. Cardi. Next time we go through, I equals 1. So names at index 1, John Legend. Next time, I equals 2. Names at index 2, Rod Wave. Go again, I equals 3. Should be LMA. Go through again. I equals 4. Trade. So on and so forth. Once I equals, so now it goes through again, I equals 5. Well, the length of my array is 5. So now this condition is false. It's not less than 5, it's equal to it. So this condition is false. The array stops, the loop stops, our program ends. That's how you loop through array real quick. But I'll cover that in more detail next Wednesday when I see you all again. Any questions about today? Any at all? Before you take this long break, because I'm sure all of this is just going to go right there and fall right out your ears over the weekend. So y'all got any questions before that happens? So we'll continue where we left off last time, which was on arrays. If you recall, arrays are simply lists, right? We can list data in memory. How do we create arrays? We do our data type first, int, right? Int, brace, whatever we want to name it. Let's name it scores. Equals new data type again. And then whatever size we want this array to be. So 50. Actually, I meant to say this before I get started. Let me pause. So again, where we left off last time, we create our array first with the data type, brace, whatever we want to name our array, then new data type again, and then the size of our array. And so this should create an array of size 50 for integers. So let's view. And like you see, it's size 50, and our indices go from 0 to whatever that size is minus 1, right? So starting at 0 all the way up to 49. Technically, that is 50 individual slots, but starting at 0, it changes that last slot from 50 to 49. All right? And we could populate this array with different attributes. So I'm going to create a random number generator, random rand equals new random, which means I need to import it, java.util.random. And so to set one of these things, I would say scores at index, let's do the first one, 0 equals rand.nextInt. I think that's the method. And I'm going to say 100. And I'll say scores at index 5 equals rand.nextInt. I'm going to say 100 as well. And lastly, scores at index 10. I'm going to say nextInt 100. Right? So I'm just going to create some random integers and add them to my my array. All right. Hold on. There we go. And add them to my array. So let's visualize this. Where is that? Oh, import java.util.random. Okay, so we create our array. We create our random little object over here. Then we said scores at index 0 equal to a random number, 36. So if you look, scores at index 0, random number. So this one, scores at index 5, should be a random number as well. Yep, index 5. Scores at index 10, random number as well. And we can continue this, you know, all the way through if we wanted to, all the way through. Everybody remember that from last time, accessing and setting the values of an array. Thumbs up or thumbs down. If you need me to review it, you can put a thumbs down. All right, so again, how do we create our arrays? So this was an integer array. We can create arrays in several different ways or different types. So I'm going to create a string array. String, brace, brace, names, new string. I'm going to say of size 5. So what we expect this to do is create an array of size 5. In other words, our indices will go from 0 to 4, 4 strings. Let's see what this looks like. Yep, size 5, and each one of these will be strings. Right now they're null. So let's edit the code. Let's set each one of these equal to something. Names at index 0, right? To access the indices, we say our array name, brace, whatever index we're trying to access, and then a closing brace. We want to set this equal to, oh, I don't know. I can't think of a name right now. I'm going blank.
Rick James.
All right.
Margaret. Oh, you're just gonna put the name? All right.
All right. What's the next name? Anybody got one?
Jose Cuervo.
All right. Jose.
Can I get a name in?
All right. What do you want?
Morel B. Heaton.
Lord have mercy. I gotta look at how to spell it.
Maurelebheton. Yeah,
All
thank
right. That good?
you. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
All right. Anyone else have a name?
El Chapo.
Java Chip.
All right. I'm gonna go with El Chapo. Chapo. And then last one. Last name. Anybody got one?
Java Chip.
What is Java Chip? Wait, hold on. I ain't gonna put something I don't know what it is. You're gonna have me looking like a fool. Anybody else got another name?
Hollywood.
Hollywood. All right. All right. So what we expect here, we have an array. So the first index, 0, should be Rick James. The next index should be Jose Cuervo. Next index should be Morel Behitin, right? The next one should be El Chapo, and then Hollywood, all right? Let's visualize this. So first index, index 0, Rick James. Index 1, Jose, Morel, El Chapo, and Hollywood. All right? We got all of our names. Cool. So that's our list. An array is simply a list. We made this one size 5. All right? So if I do system.out.println names at index 3, what do you expect my program to print? You can put it in the chat.
You'll print out Morel, right?
Will it?
Would it?
I don't know.
Wouldn't it print out El Chapo?
That's correct. So although Morel is the third name, it's actually index 2. And I'm saying print out index 3, which is El Chapo. So we visualize this. I'm just going to skip to the end. It's going to print out El Chapo. All right. Now, what if I do this? Now, what do you expect it to print out?
El Chapo and Rick James.
We have the dash, but yeah, it should print out
Oh yeah, dash.
both of those right there. Yep.
I got a question.
All right.
It's about reading in names.
Reading
So
from the console.
yeah, so I know how to do, I know how to read in, doubles, integers, and one-word names, but I was having trouble thinking about how would you read in Rick James?
Okay. So what you would do is,
I know you got to use the next open parameters, but I was having trouble doing that for some reason.
so what you can do is, I'll just do this right here. Names index 0 equals, actually let me create a scanner. Scanner input equals new scanner. System dot in. And then inside my console, I'm going to put Rick James. Okay. So what you can do is, this is technically a line. So I can do input dot next line, and it will read in this entire line.
Oh, okay. So that's different from if I said input.next open parameters.
Right. Input
Because
next only gets one and stops at space.
yeah, so when I tried to do that, yeah, it was about the lab, but like I tried to put in 5 different names, and when I tried to put it, like I would put in the first name, a space, second name, and then it would end because I think it was counting the spaces or something like that.
Right. And it also depends on how you print out the prompt. So if I do this, system.out.print, print works kind of funny when you're trying to read in the whole line. So I would recommend you do print line. Do print line. And that should alleviate that issue. Where if you're trying to read the whole line, it sometimes gives issues and stuff like that. So whenever you're doing your prompts, I would do print line. Enter 2 names. And what it would do is put the prompt on a new line and read from there. So I visualize this. Go forward one, I create my scanner. I prompt the user down here. Then I have these two names I'm going to read in. The first name is Rick James. Second one is Jose Cuervo. And then we have the rest of these down here. It prints out everything that we had before. All right, so let's do something different. Let's do an integer array, scores equals new int, size 10. All right. Let's say int index 0 equals 5. Actually, let's do this of size 5. Int index 1 equals a 55. Int 2 equals a 95. It says 65. Int 3 equals a random number. Int 4 equals another random number. All right, delete this stuff over here. So again, we expect int 0 to be 5, and I'm just going to visualize this so you can see. And where's my error? Oh, I know what it is. I gotta use the name of my array. All right, I'm gonna skip to the end. And of course, we have our list of all of these values. So now, if I do this, scores at index 3 equals scores at index 3 plus, right, minus, actually, let me do this, scores at index 2 plus scores at index 0 minus, what would be system dot out dot println. What do you expect to be printed out?
Oh, 96. I think, right? Yeah.
I'm gonna say 35.
Nah, the reason I say that because you ain't gonna do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm bugging. I thought it was -4. Yeah, it's 35.
35.
Yeah, it's 35.
All right. Does everybody see that? So it should print out 35. So what we've done is we overrode the value of scores at index 3 with this equation over here. So we go forward. This is our current array. So we take scores at index 2, 95, plus 0 is 100, minus 4, or index 4, minus 65 should be 35, and then we print that out. Yep. So that's what we covered last time. Everybody clear on arrays? Good, good. All right. So let's see how we loop through an array. So we want to loop through this array. Let's say, for example, we just want to set it equal to some random numbers between 0 and 100. So we want to loop through an array. We know that an array has a beginning and an end, right? So for example, this array is size 10. So there's going to be 10 exact slots in this array. So if we know that there's a beginning and an end, we should use a for loop. So for, and we want to say int I equals whatever the index is that we want to start at. So I want to start at index 0. While I is less than scores, and what is the overall size of our array? How many indices? Scores.length. That will return 10. And then each time we go through this loop, we want to increment I by 1. So let's create a random object, random rand. It goes new random. And so let's do scores at index I. And remember, I changes each time. It starts at 0 and goes all the way up to our scores.length minus 1, or 9. Scores I equals rand.next int 100. Close this for loop. Let's see what happens. So we create our array, create our random object, and we start our for loop. And of course, I starts at 0. So scores at index I, or scores at index 0, equals a random number, 62. We go through again. Now I equals 1. So scores at index 1, random number. Now I equals 2. And so we'll keep going and just set our array equal to random numbers. All the way down. Once I equals 10, it now equals the length of our array. So the for loop stops and we finish our program. So this is how you would loop through an array. You would use a for loop, and then int I equals whatever index you want to start at. Typically, you want to start at 0. I is less than the name of our array dot length, I plus plus. Then we access our array using the I variable. We can do this again. Instead of a random number, I'm just going to say I times I. So basically, I cubed. Each time we go through, it'll equal I cubed. The first time we go through, I equals 0. So 0 times 0 times 0 should be 0. That doesn't change. Next time we go through, I equals 1. 1 times 1 times 1 should be 1. Next time we go through, I equals 2. 2 times 2 times 2 equals what?
8.
8. This is correct. 3 cubed equals what?
27.
Yes, that is right. 4 cubed.
64.
All right, 5 cubed.
25.
This is correct. I'm just going to keep going. 6 cubed is 216. I wouldn't have gotten that one.
254. Oh, 216.
What is 7 cubed? I'm gone.
260.
All right, 8 cubed, 512, and 9 cubed is 729. So all I did was loop through my array and set each one of these equal to whatever the value of I is cubed. And so this is what all of our cubes are, right? So this is how you loop through an array. Simple, simple, simple.